Hello there and welcome to my October 2023 reading vlog. Now, we are already 1 week into the month and I have done quite a bit. I recently went to a city to go to something called a fear mall, which is just an indoor vendor's market with a lot of spooky stuff. It was very noisy in there, so I didn't get a lot of footage, but it was super fun and I got lots of really nice goodies. I also went to a comic and toy store, so I will show you my haul now. Now, as for my reading that I am doing for the month, I am doing a lot of reading for my vlog that will come out earlier this month, that being the Batman vlog, where I read the comic books that inspired the film The Batman from 2022, and I will also be reading some of the supplementary material that came out with the movie, that being the script book and the art book. So I will be going into more detail about those books in that vlog, but I will show you some of the things that I've read. I've read Batman Year One by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. I have also read Batman The Long Halloween and Batman Dark Victory by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale. I have also read The Art of the Batman by some guy, apologies, I don't know the name, with Matt Reeves, and I will soon be reading the script book before I watch the film. Now, for my regular reading for the month, I am of course continuing my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster, and this month I am reading In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, which is a real-life account of a murder of a family that happened in Holcomb, Texas in 1959. It was the Clutter family, and Capote goes to everyone in the town and gets their accounts of everything, and he goes through the process of the events of the night, the murder, and eventually finding the criminals who did it. I will talk more about it in that respective vlog, of course, as well, but I just wanted to say that this is pretty tastefully done and it is emotionally moving me. I normally do not like true crime, but I feel like this is proto-true crime. This is probably the catalyst for inspiring a lot of true crime, and I am really enjoying it so far. And finally, I am currently listening to the audiobook of From Dead to Worse by Charlaine Harris, which I believe is the 8th book in the Sookie Stackhouse series, or the True Blood books. And I'm liking it so far. They're very light. They're almost like a cozy mystery with a supernatural twist in them, and I'm really enjoying them so far. They're really light and easy listens, and I'm only about 30% of the way through it at the moment, but I am enjoying it. As for the rest of my month, I'm going to try and get some spooky Halloween books in there, but I read like that every month of the year, so I don't normally do anything too crazy, and I also hope to celebrate more of the spooky season. But I feel like in October I get a bit burnt out because everyone's doing all of their spooky stuff this month and expecting me to be as spooky, even though I spread it out the whole rest of the year. So I just always feel a little bit overwhelmed, and I feel like I'm rushing, that I'm not doing enough in 31 days. So I'm going to try and just ease through this month as best as I can. I'm also super close to finishing my Goodreads book number for the year, so I am not scrambling or anything. I feel like this month and November is going to be the rest of those books counting, and then for December I can maybe reread something. I get very busy in December, so I think I'm going to take it super easy. So that's my update for now. catch up to do, except for the fact that I haven't really done too much reading. I finished that Sookie Stackhouse book, and as usual, I give it 3 stars. They're always great. They're always simple enough. Next, I decided to read this book that my mom got me for super cheap at a thrift store, and that being Jane Bites Back by Michael Thomas Ford. This is the story of if Jane Austen were a vampire and survived to modern day. Modern day being that little mini trend that happened that started with Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, where all of the classics got a supernatural twist, which in turn was connected to the whole Twilight craze. There's a huge pattern there. However, Jane Austen in this book is aware of that new trend and is responding to it. She's trying to get one of her novels published under her pseudonym. She's trying to date like a human guy, and she has a vampire and like his group following her, trying to get her to join back into their circle. That vampire turns out to be Lord Byron in one of the most horrible portrayals of him that I've ever seen. It's not even based on the notorious bachelor player abuser guy in actual historical fact, but rather he's just clingy. He's clingy, and he quotes himself, and he's very annoying. So, worst portrayal of Byron that I've ever seen is in this novel. Jane also owns a bookstore in this and has a coworker named Lucy who gets sort of swayed into the whole vampire business. Wow, how, original. So anyway, this book ultimately got 2 stars for me because it is just riding off of a trend's coattails that is based on another trend's coattails. So this is just flying in the wind as its little, very flash in the pan, very 2012 little fad. And there are more books in this series, but no, I won't do that. No. No. And currently, to finish off the month, I am reading the Penguin Book of Vampire Stories, edited by Alan Ryan. This has 32 different vampire stories in it. This was originally published in the 80s. This is a revamp. For whenever it was actually published. I just feel like this is too modern to have been published in the 80s, but anyway, I'm about a third into it. I've actually read quite a few of the actual stories in here. This collection includes Dracula's Guest, it includes Carmilla, it includes The Vampire by Polidori, and it includes the little passage that Byron wrote during that same month where Frankenstein was originally created. As for the rest of the stories in here so far, nothing has really captured my attention. The thing with reading a whole bunch of vampire stories from the 1890s to essentially the 1980s is that you get a huge sense of deja vu because you are just reading the same sort of story over and over again in the same sort of prose. If you were just reading it on its own, it'd probably be a good tale, but with a lot of these, I like to read the book. So it is just a lot of the same thing. Usually in these edited collections, I find 1 to 3 stories that are just they blow me out of the water and I rave about them. I love them. So I'm really hoping that there is at least one in here that I just heavily enjoy. So stay tuned for that. I think I still have 26 of these to read. So I'll let you know my favorite one at the end. So that is it for now. Enjoy more of the fall vibes in the rest of this month. It's looking to be a rainy Halloween, and in my area they have predicted snow. I'm hoping it's wet snow so it doesn't stop the trick-or-treaters from coming up. So stay tuned for my wrap-up soon. sun keeps like appearing and then disappearing, so if there's just huge changes of light, I do apologize for that. We're getting our last days of fall because the weather is predicting snow in the next few days. So I'm so glad that I got to enjoy an entire month of fall before hell freezes over. So this month I read 8.5 books. For the first half of the month, I read Batman comics and books related to the release of 2022's The Batman film, directed by Matt Reeves. So I will simply list those books here just as my wrap-up for them because I have an entire vlog dedicated to discussion of those. So I read Batman Year One by Frank Miller. I read Batman The Long Halloween and Batman Dark Victory by Jeph Loeb. I read the Batman Scriptbook, and I read The Art of the Batman. So those last two books were connected to the film. And for the other books that I read this month, for my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster, I read In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, and I ended up giving that book 4 stars. I talk more about it in that vlog that will come out in November, but I just think that this book was really excellently written. I was captivated by it, I was emotionally affected by it, and I was glad to see the criminals get their justice for what they did. And I thought this was a very appropriate read for the spooky season. I normally don't like true crime, but this one was done pretty well. It wasn't exploitative, and it was just very well researched, well done, and made for an excellent narrative. So this was an excellent book that I actually highly recommend to people who both like true crime and don't. Next, I listened to the audiobook of From Dead to Worse by Charlaine Harris, which is a book in the Sookie Stackhouse series, which later became the True Blood TV show. And I gave that one 3 stars. They're all very standard, very easy to listen to, very fun listens, and it's not as serious as the HBO show became. It's just very lighthearted stuff, and I enjoyed it for the most part. It was nice to read about witches and shifters and vampires during the Halloween season. Next, I read this book that my mom got me at a thrift store. It is Jane Bites Back by Michael Thomas Ford. It is about Jane Austen, who is a vampire who has survived to the modern day. She owns a bookstore, and she is bombarded by this new trend that was happening the year the book was published, where a bunch of classics were being used for other people's works. This is based on the Pride and Prejudice and Zombies book that came out that started that whole craze of adding the supernatural to classics. But she also talks about how the name Jane Austen is used in cookbooks, in romance, the name Darcy being used as the perfect man. All of that is discussed in here, as well as her connecting to her old historical roots by having her vampire maker be Lord Byron, which I said earlier was just a tasteless depiction of Byron, and not even in a fun way. That guy was a shitbag, but he was like an iconic shitbag. He's pathetic in here. So I gave the book 2 stars because it is entirely based on a gimmick, based on a trend, so I totally get where like the origin of this came from, but it just wasn't that great of a book. A little bit short. There are more books in the series, but I will not read them. I just didn't enjoy this as much as I thought I would. It's, for what it is, it's fine, it's cheeky, fun, and there's a little bit of romance and a little bit of excitement, and if you just like reading old names from the past be referenced, which is something that I really can't stand in my vampire fiction, you go for it. This just was not for me. And finally, I am making my way through the Penguin book of vampire stories edited by Alan Ryan. I am not finished it yet. It is the end of the month and I'm not finished a book yet. Who knows if I'll finish it in the next upcoming days or not, but I'm going to talk about it here and not in my November wrap-up, because this is my October read, even though I'm not done it yet. So I'm going to assume I give this edited collection 3 stars, because I typically give edited short story collections 3 stars, because there's a lot of, stories that are duds, and then there's a few that are great. Mind you, I have read about 200 pages of this already, given all the stories that I've already read, including Carmilla, the vampire, Dracula's guest, etc. But so far, a lot of the stories have blurred together for me. I will add in writing somewhere on screen if there are stories in here that I think are just so excellent that I have to mention them. But otherwise, it's just one of those standard vampire short story collections. I've read about 5 in my life now, maybe 6, so they're all just starting to give me a sense of deja vu. So that's why I'm taking my time finishing this one instead of trying to read it all at once and just having it all blur together. So for now, I'm giving this 3 stars. And that was my month of October. Funnily enough, I have finished my Goodreads book count for the year. I read 75 books. I'm still going to keep going in November, but once again in December, since I will not have a reading vlog, I will either reread books or not read at all because my work gets very busy in December and I hardly ever enjoy anything or remember anything, so I don't like to read then. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.